Hello, everyone. Welcome to our earnings preview. Today, right after the bell, 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern, give or take. Well, no, just take. Not give.
Can't
Disneyland,
give.
Disneyland announced their first quarter earnings. For those uninitiated, Disney's first quarter would be October through December. And we will Bob Chapek will be, and Christy McCarthy, the CFO, will be on a call discussing those, and sometimes news breaks, and we kind of come here in the morning to kind of preview what we expect, and then we'll be back after all the fun to break it all down. I will say, to me, this quarter is going to be very interesting because there's basically two parts of Disney's business. You have the media side, which is basically Disney Plus at this point. Not a lot of theatrical. There's, Encanto had a run, but not a lot there. And then the parks. And on the media side, the Disney Plus subscriber number disappointed investors last quarter. So it'll be interesting to see not only what the number is, but how the investment community reacts. Is it above expectations, below expectations? I'm highly even create expectations. And then on the park side, it was interesting because basically October, December, you have that period that's after Delta, and then you have the beginning of Omicron kind of coming in there. So it's like, if you've been following, it seems like Disney's kind of feast or famine. It's like when there's not a variant, like the parks are busy, you can't get a reservation, things are booked out, and then there's a variant, and then it's like, tumbleweeds.
Well, it's also the 50th in this quarter.
Yeah. And I think that's an excellent point because, that October period, that opening weekend, the place was packed. You couldn't get a hotel room. I mean, I was talking Disney World, but, and then, what we have a lot less visibility on domestically, just because we can't obviously travel that much, is how the international parks are doing. Obviously, Hong Kong is closed right now.
It was open during Q1.
Exactly. And then, Shanghai, who knows? And then, Disneyland Paris seems like, remember they put it on that restriction where UK visitors couldn't come to the park. Not quite sure where that fell. And,
I think it's lifted now as they've moved to a different. France keeps changing their rules as I'm navigating myself. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, it seems like everyone is. It's interesting. Lyft announced their earnings today, and they definitely got hit by the Omicron. And they're basically saying, hey, it seems like we're getting back to normal, but keep them in mind. So you can actually see they announced the earnings. There's a big dip. And then once they say, like, no, this was Omicron related, it kind of went back to, where it was.
I don't get it. I don't know why people are so reactive. Like, oh, they said this, and then let me buy it back. I mean, I guess people are making money in those moments. That's what day traders are for. But
right.
It's very funny to me. But I think as boring as it is to say, you were right when you said that this one's going to be about Disney Plus again, because we saw when Netflix had that miss and they tanked, Disney went down with them just based on their competitors not doing well. So I think that's definitely going to be a focus of this call in particular. I mean, especially, we're going to have questions about Disney's trying to ramp up their rollout and their cadence of content. And, that keeps getting set back by different things. And like you're saying, all these different variants. So I think you're going to get a lot of questions on that front, as well as even as, things are starting to ramp up. We don't have a lot of I don't know if it's good or bad that they aren't assigning a lot of dates to stuff that they've announced is coming in 2022. Kind of like I think we were a little surprised when Moon Knight was so soon. But with their recent track history, it's probably better that they don't give dates until they're absolutely sure that something's going to arrive on time.
Well, and, I'm just, the Dow is up right now. Disney stock, which is part of the Dow, is up as well. Way off the highs that they had, sort of after the investor day, about 30 points.
I know we're near the lows of the beginning of the pandemic, like when it was $80. Like, what's it, like 140 something now?
Yeah, it's at 143 right now. So it's basically like midway through, right? Like, pandemic low was about 100, maybe 89, and then the high was about 200. So we're kind of right in the middle there, which is probably where it should be. They're still trying to figure it out. The pandemic's lasted longer than we probably, they probably thought when they did the investor day. And some interesting things that are coming across the wire is that first, I mean, this isn't Disney, but it could impact Disney. Is the Warner Media Discovery merger was just approved by regulators today, which is probably their biggest hurdle to accomplishing it. So that will create, obviously you have HBO Max on the Warner side, Discovery Plus on the Discovery side. Who knows if they're going to combine it? Which begs a question that I've been thinking a lot more about. Yesterday they announced Blackish and Grownish are coming to Disney Plus. This morning, West Side Story is coming in March, and it's like the lines between what's Hulu and Disney Plus are vanishing very quickly. There's obviously some economic, since Disney doesn't fully own Hulu, there's question, they can't just sort of merge them.
The Wonder Years is on Disney Plus as well.
Yeah, so it feels like the inevitability of the Disney bundle becoming the de facto subscription seems to be coming quickly. And like you look at everybody, quote, everybody else, like Paramount, Viacom, Paramount, whatever, and HBO Max, Warner Brothers. It's like they kind of have this like, hey, we got everything. We got news, we got sports, we got whatever. And obviously there's things that come up on Hulu like Dollface that just wouldn't feel like it belongs to Disney Plus. But when we across the world, basically outside of here, Disney Plus has that star tile and everything's there. You have Deadpool alongside Spidey and his amazing friends.
I saw some confused tweets about that not too long ago. People talking about Pam and Tommy being on Disney Plus, meaning internationally, and they're like, so they can't do a Lizzie McGuire reboot on Disney Plus, but they can do Pam and Tommy, and it's like, no, it's different.
Well, and I think it's funny because that Lizzie McGuire thing happened so early. Like you really wonder if that would have changed. If that was kind of proposed now, if things would have changed. Because remember that was before the star tile was even talked about. They added that to Canada not long after launch, but relatively after launch. So that was definitely a pivot. Like they were definitely like, hey, maybe we should expand it here. And it just, in the last call, Bob kind of, you read the tea leaves. He wasn't like, no, well, we're never going to do it. He's like, yeah, we'll see what happens, which is code for, hey, we've talked about it.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of like those early days, it's interesting now to see some of this like Supper Club stuff, these sort of things that they ordered, like, oh, we'll just, put this on Disney Plus before it turned into what it was, which is this huge part of the company. Before they thought, oh, we'll have some smaller stuff. And so that scale is kind of coming in now, like with More Than Robots, right. Documentary directed by Gillian Jacobs. So I'm excited because I like Gillian Jacobs.
Yeah, she had a great Marvel 616 episode too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she's turning into a documentary director. So that's kind of cool.
Well, and it's interesting too because, I think Mandalorian, thankfully, kind of hid the fact that between Mandalorian and Jeff Goldblum was like the only original shows of that initial batch, just like initial first 6 months that did anything. All that documentary stuff besides Jeff Goldblum. And remember, Jeff Goldblum was actually developed for National Geographic. It was sort of moved to Disney Plus. But that original slate, back when Disney Plus created its own content, didn't hit. And I mean, I think that was part of the reason you saw, Agnes Chu leave and new people, they sort of brought in the existing team. They had all this sort of like really low key stuff. And I mean, I don't mean low key, but and then you had like Mandalorian and with Falcon and Winter Soldier stuff. And it just like the fact that Disney Family Sundays was on Disney Plus when it should is kind of shocking in hindsight because it was basically a YouTube
series. And we saw they started to catch on to that when they moved the Ahmed Best Star Wars show to YouTube instead of Disney Plus.
When they did that, a couple of things. They had a Marvel show called Storytellers with Joe Quesada, which moved to YouTube, and it was during a time when, they didn't have a lot of content because of the pandemic. So it's like they really must have not wanted it on Disney Plus because, like,
well, I don't think they wanted to fall into like the Netflix problem where people, there's lots of good stuff on Netflix, but because they also had a reputation for just buying whatever crap this other studios didn't want anymore, it's hard to hurt them and taint the rest of their good content. People thinking that it's just going to be crap because some of the other stuff is. So I think Disney probably made a conscious effort to be like, let's not do the same thing.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned you remember the girl in the window or woman in the window?
Yeah. Oh yeah, the Amy Adams movie.
Yeah, and they moved that to Netflix, and I was like, wow, that's like they want all this stuff for Hulu and Disney Plus, and they're moving something to like Netflix, and then I was like, that's crazy, and then it got nominated for like a bunch of Razzies, so maybe they knew more than I did, which is not uncommon. But yeah, it's just so here's my question. Sometimes we get we'll get the news of the earnings, but do you think we're going to get like any breaking news, like new shows or a big theme park announcement? Because sometimes they drop those in, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. And there's not even necessarily a trend of you would think that if they know the earnings are going to be disappointing, then they throw in some news to try to like bump it up. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it's good earnings and they announce stuff. There's a lot of stuff that we don't have clear dates on that they could just throw out there for the heck of it. I think you're going to get questions about probably not the ship. Someone might ask about the ship being delayed. I mean, that's a couple quarters away, but still, like it's a takes up a third of the upcoming quarter, and that's things not going to be operating. But I think you're going to get the most questions about on the park side as far as the annual passes being sold out at both resorts and when those are going to come back.
Yeah, I was thinking you might get something about like the uptake of Genie Plus. Now that it's rolled out at Disneyland as well.
I also kind of forgot that existed. So,
so
that's how often I've been going to the parks these days.
Yeah. It's the other thing that's going to be interesting, and I don't know if there's going to be a change in tone, but you have since the last quarter, you have a new general counsel, new chief lawyer. You have a new sort of corporate affairs or communications falls under. You have a new investor relations person. So, they may have different ideas of how to proceed with these things.
Well, the new Lowell was their last call, right?
No, you know what? Lowell wasn't. But it had an interim person.
Oh, it was an interim person. Okay.
Yeah.
I just know that it wasn't Lowell.
And now that this is also the first earnings call, not the quarter itself, but the first earnings call where Bob Iger, not that he hasn't been on the call, but he's not going to be he's not an employee at this point. So, is Bob Chapek going to take a different tone with these things? Bob Iger changed, the kind of method that they did a lot of things with, like shareholder meeting and earnings call, from Michael Eisner. And it'll be interesting to see how Bob Chapek views these things. It's been pretty obvious Bob Chapek loves like big announcement events. D23 Expo.
I was gonna say, I heard he didn't want to go to the Destination D23 though.
That would not be an accurate report. But I think there was always stories of like, he wants to make a big splash at D23, he loves D23 and all this stuff. So, is he going to save it for that kind of thing? Or does he want to make a splash of earnings? the other interesting thing that happened yesterday, I guess, is Disney Plus did their first live stream, and they basically just showed the Good Morning America Oscars announcements, or Oscar nominations. But then they had they put it out there that this was their first live stream, and they were testing it, and so I'm curious to see if moving forward, as we get back into sort of more of a normal cadence, are we going to see live streams of various events, whether it's movie premieres, theme park openings, or a D23 Expo, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we've wondered about before. I thought that they had actually done like Disney, like the Parks blog live streams on there, but maybe they just put them on after the fact or something.
Yeah, they did that for a while. Like live stream of the new show or something. They would put up the video of basically Enchantment or whatever. I don't remember what it was, but yeah, and then remember they did those like live streams of like the sun coming up at the parks. I think they put those up.
And then they did they weren't live, but those like presentations, quote unquote, for like on Disney Plus Day, like the Pixar one and the Marvel one.
Which would be more fun if they were live. I mean,
yeah, I think we were kind of expecting them to be like they said they're going to be on at 10, so it sounded like it was going to be a live stream, and it's like no, we just turned a video on.
Well, and to me, it's what's weird about this is the fact that they're making a thing of it is, they stream ESPN Plus, which is basically all live. I mean, they have their shows and their thing, but it's
they got Tuck Rule
live,
or will have. Or do they now? Is it out?
What's that?
Tuck Rule.
Yeah, it's on ESPN Plus.
Yeah,
because it aired on Sunday.
We'll talk about it more tomorrow, but
yeah,
if you have an ESPN Plus subscription, go check it out now.
And then Hulu has live, as a commercial say,
Hulu doesn't just have live sports; it's a lifestyle.
So, hey, I mean, this is an earnings, but I do have this question: do you expect there to be any Super Bowl Disney ads?
I mean, I think you'll probably have the normal one, right?
Well, what are you gonna do next?
I think there'll be trailers and stuff. I don't know what, because that's kind of hard to pick at this point. I don't necessarily think they would do anything brand new that we haven't seen anything from before. But I could see like follow-up spots.
And there's not a Star Wars movie coming out. I mean, assuming it's still coming out this year, the big surprise would be like a big Avatar like preview or something.
That's true. I could see them doing probably something about the bundle, just like maybe with like new, kind of like they did on Disney Plus Day with the Marvel thing, like just showing like quick hits of stuff. I could see something like that. It feels like we just had a Moon Knight trailer, so I don't know if they'd give us they might maybe like a TV spot, but not like a full thing. But yeah, I just guess I don't really know what else. An Avatar 2 one, that's a good guess, but it's to the point where I don't know if they would. I feel like we'd know about it, but then again, maybe they could still do surprises. But I feel like they don't really care about, like, there's Super Bowl ads that are airing right now, and everything hits the internet ahead of time.
I feel like though the movie people are like the Doritos people, they want like all the the lead up, but I feel like movies, they try and keep them under their belts. Not all the time, but I think we all expect something Star Wars to hit the service on May 4th, but we haven't heard anything. Maybe we'll.
That's a good point. Yeah, an Obi-Wan trailer.
Yeah,
I think that's a good bet actually.
And I feel like obviously on the theatrical side, the big thing is Doctor Strange, which we already kind of saw out of Spider-Man. So I don't know if that would be not that they couldn't do it just because as a regular commercial, it's not every commercial has to be a surprise, but I feel like Star Wars is the one where it's like they could really make an impact by like announcing it, because they kind of doubled down earlier this year that all the Star Wars content coming to Disney Plus this year, and it's starting to get to a point where it's going to get pretty packed in there if they don't start releasing stuff. And then Marvel, we had the Moon Knight trailer. I don't know if they would go into like a Ms. Marvel or She-Hulk kind of the other shows.
Well, that's why I'm thinking like a combo trailer, sort of, for like what's coming to Disney Plus.
I actually think, I know we have Expo coming up in September, but I really feel, and then Star Wars Celebration at the end of May, but I really feel like Marvel needs to do like something. Like we went to that Phase 3 event. Like I feel like, now that production, not that it's normal, but it's getting there. Um, I feel like they could definitely use a sort of State of the Union and kind of just do their thing.
Yeah, I
Instead of
mean,
watching a Comic-Con or an Expo or anything where it's like, that which just is, and it was one thing when we had show after show after show, sort of once WandaVision started. But like I think something like something between now and Moon Knight would just be a lot of fun to kind of kick off the next phase.
I feel like if you look at the calendar, though, it already goes so deep. So you would basically just be putting dates with those things and maybe reshuffling some stuff. Whereas Phase 3, like everyone knew that they were doing a Captain America 3 at that point, and maybe a couple others you could guess, but they sat up there and laid out the next few years. And I feel like we already kind of know what the next few years entail. It just keeps getting pushed back.
Yeah.
So it might not make as much of a splash as that event that we went to all those years ago.
Yeah, but at some point they're going to need to start beyond what we know, and I don't know when that's going to be, but because it was only when they announced it was only like 2 years that they announced. Now it ended up taking a lot longer because pandemic, but
Spider-Man.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what the impact is of Spider-Man. It's a Sony movie, but Disney has some skin in the game. How that all plays out. It's normally it would be sort of immaterial, I think, because the Disney movies would sort of overpower it. But because there's no Disney movies and because Spider-Man was so big.
Do you think we'll get a question about that? Do you think someone will be like, so, this movie just made $1 billion something? How much you get?
well, here's an excellent point, though. I feel like Spider-Man, everyone's been moving to streaming. The streaming numbers have kind of disappointed across other companies. Netflix took a big hit, lost like a crazy percentage of their valuation. And then you're looking at like Spider-Man, and it's made $1 billion. And you're like, maybe we're being silly by leaving $1 billion on the table by moving everything to streaming. And, to me, like the investors are always like, they always rush to like the new thing without thinking of like, hey, maybe we shouldn't screw up our existing business. Like they all want ESPN to like move direct to consumer without realizing that might not be a smart idea, like economically, at this point. But, so like I feel like sometimes the best executives are the ones who just like push back on on investment people who don't actually know how to run their business. But it'll be interesting to see, I think we've seen that Marvel movies have done well theatrically. Kids movies still hasn't quite recovered, but now with, vaccines available to kids, schools returning to normal, it depends where you live, what the deal is, but it'd be interesting to see is Turning Red the last of these sort of meant to be theatrical, but ended up on Disney Plus because no one's going to theaters. Yeah, I mean, we just had the Lightyear trailer, and they were very specific not to say where to watch it. Did not say only in theaters. It also did not say coming to Disney Plus. They were.
It's releasing.
Right. It will be direct download to your brain.
You can believe Tony pointed that out in his post.
So we're going to start to wrap up here, but there's a lot going on. So I just want to kind of go through what's happening today. At 7:00, Disney Parks is going to do their fairy tale wedding live stream. So if you want to see what the latest wedding dresses are, you can join them. At 8:00, all time specific. At 8:00, Hasbro is doing their Hasbro Fan First Wednesday Star Wars. I'm not sure if there's spoilers to Book of Boba Fett in it, so you may want to be careful. But Mike will be covering that for us. Then if you have ESPN on a linear channel, you can see that throughout the day they'll be broadcasting from the Disney Resort leading up to their Super Bowl coverage. We will be back after the bell, after the earnings call to break down whatever happens. And then at 6 o'clock tonight, we will have Marvel Time, a special time due to the earnings call. And we got live streams every day at 6 this week. Today we got Marvel Time. Tomorrow we've got the LP Movie Club for the 30 for 30, the Tuck Rule, and then Drafting Place. Do you guys know what you're drafting yet on Friday?
I think we're doing Disney couples, but I'm not 100% sure.
No, that would make sense.
Yes, Valentine's meets Super Bowl.
So Dow is up today. Our buddy Carl is on CNBC explaining all of this. But we will find out what the earnings are in just about 6 hours.
Something like that.
So
I have one last thing. What are the odds we get a question, even though it's completely unrelated, what are the odds we get a Joe Rogan question during the earnings call?
I think it's pretty low. Because what we get a lot of feedback on is people, this is not a Disney fan Q&A. This is also not a press Q&A. These are people that are like asking questions about like, hey, in what quarter are you realizing the cost of the marketing for our, the 50th anniversary celebration or whatever. And it's not, I don't know that Joe Rogan is going to impact earnings, impact the Disney's business in any way. They may, if it was a press call, they may be like, hey, how do you avoid something like Joe Rogan? But I don't think the investment community is going to care. Like, I don't think they think of that as, I think they think Disney is either going to navigate it fairly okay, or B, every media company has to deal with this every once in a while, and you deal with it. Like Mulan would be, it's different, but that's where a movie that had controversy, it impacted, but you never, you don't necessarily see those things coming, and you can't let it paralyze you. But anyway, thanks so much, Kyle. We'll be back later.
All right. Bye.